right. Happy day, Grant. It's another beautiful day on the route to Tone Town.
Indeed.
And we had a really spirited episode last week where we talked about some of the best-selling devices on Reverb, and some of it was kind of a year-to-date accumulation of pedals, and then some of them were from the previous year. But we're very fortunate that it just so happens that Reverb released their brand new best-selling effects pedals of 2022. And we have a list of 20 of the best-selling pedals of the year that had come out this year, and then the top 20 overall. And so we can take a look at that, dive into it, give our opinions on it. And it seemed that this was fruitful for other people. There was other people that got very upset that we didn't know about the Earthquaker devices, Johnny Unitas, or whatever. I don't remember what it was called, but it was something that apparently we should have known about.
And now we do.
And now we know.
Yeah.
Now we know. But before we get into this episode where we're exploring these devices, these best-selling devices of the year, we first want to break for a moment to hear from some of our sponsors that make the podcast possible every single week. Let's hear from them, and then we will rejoin on the best gear of 2022, according to Reverb. Now, before we go any further into the podcast, I want to talk about one of our amazing sponsors, our friends over at BetterHelp. Now, all of us have been in a situation where we've been extremely frustrated. Life can throw some curveballs at us for sure, whether that is frustration in rewiring your new pedalboard or rack rig, or just the things that come up as a part of being human and being alive. There's no manual or troubleshooting guide for how to deal with the curveballs that life throws at you. But there is some amazing companies like BetterHelp that can help you navigate this. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy service and has matched over 3 million people with a therapist that's already vetted and licensed and is ready to begin helping you. All you need to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and if things aren't clicking for any reason between you and the therapist, you can change it at any time. There's no waiting rooms, there's no traffic, there's no endless search to find the right therapist, and you can learn more and save 10% off on your first month by going to betterhelp.com/chairman. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/chairman, and get 10% off of your first month. Sorry for the interruption, guys, but I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about one of the sponsors of the show, the Guitar Sanctuary. Now, Guitar Sanctuary is not only the place where Brian Omilion is housed and builds all of his spectacular pedal boards, it's also one of the flagship dealerships in all of the United States. They carry Vertex products, they carry Goodwood products, and pretty much any major brand or boutique brand you can think of is available there, whether it's a guitar, amplifier, or guitar pedals. They have it all. Absolutely amazing shop. Great service, great staff, knowledgeable people, just like Brian Omilion. And furthermore, if you want to have a rig built, you can hire Brian Omilion through the Guitar Sanctuary to build the rig of your dreams. So many different options there, having all the pedals and everything you might need under one roof, and having a guy like Brian Omilion build your pedal board. It is a match made in heaven. Definitely check out the Guitar Sanctuary. It will be linked in the show notes and in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. Absolutely amazing store, highly recommended by the chairman of the boards.
Awesome. So we have the two lists, like you mentioned. We have pedals that were released in 2022 and kind of the best-selling, pedals out of that list, out of new releases. Favorite new releases, let's call them. And then we also have overall bestsellers regardless of release date. So you might have something like a Strymon Timeline on there that was released, 12 years ago, 11 years ago, maybe more? We're coming on halfway up to vintage on the timeline here.
Right.
Which is crazy. We have, best-selling regardless of release date. So let's get into best new releases, pedals that were released in 2022. This may be controversial, Mason, but right off the bat, I have to say with this list.
Wait, should I share this so people, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see exactly the list.
You can get a bit of a sneak peek and see where we're going here.
Okay, here's the list.
I don't know if I'm allowed to disagree with this because I have to plead ignorance here. I don't work for Reverb. I don't actually know what the best-selling pedals are on paper, but I just don't think this list is all that accurate. And I think we should chat about it. There are a lot, regardless of my opinions, which could be wrong. Regardless of my opinions, the pedal list here, there's some great stuff. And like top of the list, if you're listening, number one, maybe we should not give away number one just yet. Let's go number 3, and we'll work our way down. Number 3, I don't necessarily disagree with. It is the new Line 6 DL4 MK2. So the re-release of the very, one of the favorite delay pedals of all time in the, what would that have been? Early 2000s, the DL4. Now they've done the re-release. It's beautiful. It's sleek. I have to be honest, I haven't played it yet, but I really want to.
Yeah.
The DL4 MK2 comes in at number 3. Have you had a chance to play with this one yet?
I have, and I have the original one as well still. And these are good pedals. And the DL4 was the Strymon timeline of its day.
Before the timeline.
And I don't know that this one maybe is going to have the same, maybe like longevity and staying power because its first incarnation was so unique. But I can guarantee you that this pedal in the industry has sold way more than number 1 and number 2 combined. I can guarantee that. Because when Yamaha makes pedals, who owns Line 6, they're not making a couple hundred. They're making tens of thousands. And I can guarantee you that there are not tens of thousands of Habits or Earthquaker device special cranker. There may be thousands. In the low thousands, maybe. That's being, I think, generous, because when you get up into especially with the Habit, when you get up into the $300+ range, the volume goes down. And Chase Bliss does sell, I think, a good volume of pedals.
They sell thousands.
They sell thousands for sure, but they're going direct. They don't have the same distribution, and that's a good thing for them because they get to keep more of the income. I totally get that. I don't think that they're producing anywhere near what Line 6 is producing when they make a pedal like this. It's just the DL4 is too ubiquitous, and the Habit is very, very specific, very fringe. So you have to find somebody who's willing to pay $350 for a guitar pedal. That's already a subcategory of person. And then you have to find somebody who wants the very specific sort of niche application of what the Habit does. And then that is another subcategory of that subcategory. The DL4 is sort of a very wide spectrum audience. It's already a very established sound, has a very established audience. Line 6 galvanizes a huge component of the marketplace. And even though you say to yourself, this isn't for me, the wider marketplace is definitely buying this pedal. Way more than the other stuff. Way more than most of the stuff on this list, in fact.
So my thought then, playing devil's advocate here, maybe this is true to Reverb because Line 6, obviously they will sell through Reverb. They'll do their whole thing through their dealers and their network, but they will mostly on a new release send out a ton of pedals to all of the music stores, distributors all around the world, Reverb being a very small component of that. So is it possible that this list, going back on what I originally said, maybe it's just for Reverb and maybe this is accurate, but it does not, it's not an accurate representation of popularity across the industry.
I'm sure it's 100% accurate for Reverb. I don't have any doubts about that. But I would say that the challenge here is that until maybe even a week ago or a couple weeks ago, when JHS did a video with Sweetwater where he went through whatever their top 10 best selling, or I forget how many pedals it was. There was no backstop for how accurate or how representative these sorts of lists were relative to the industry. And so to my knowledge, Reverb was the only company really putting something like this forward that was a place where, commerce of multiple different brands would happen under the same roof. And so I think a lot of people would look at this and would say, well, this is the number one best-selling pedal in the world is the Chase Bliss Habit. And that's not to say that it's not a well-made pedal or it doesn't sound great. I think it checks those boxes for sure. But this is such a slice or such a subcategory of all the different brands out there, which I think tends to favor Reverb released products. Like I can guarantee you, looking at number 12, here's the proof here. The JHS Overdrive preamp, I believe, was something that he sold as an exclusive or at least a launch on Reverb. And that's where you could buy it, or at least the specialty ones that he did. I can guarantee you that he sold way more overall, if you're looking at all of his dealers and all that stuff, of other pedals than of that.
Yep. And maybe it's good to clarify for people that aren't aware, Reverb will partner with brands. So JHS will come to Reverb, or Vertex, as an example. I don't know if you've ever done this. Might go to Reverb and say, hey, I've got a new pedal coming. Do you want to partner with me and launch it? And Reverb will get it in front of their audience. That will help sales. They'll put it in front of the right people, and everyone profits from it. And that's not a bad thing at all. Mm-hmm. But it does skew the numbers, and it puts certain pedals in favor above others on the Reverb marketplace.
And I think that's true, because if I look at 17, which is the Soldano SLO pedal, that pedal came out a week ago, and it's already in the top 17. Like I just
Good
don't.
For them, man. Good for them.
I just don't believe that it sold tens of thousands of units relative to everything else that's out
in
there.
The last 7 days.
It's a cool pedal. Don't get me wrong. It looks cool. It sounds cool. I can 100%, I can 1,000% guarantee you that a JHS Rat Pack launch sold way more than this pedal.
Yep.
I can just guarantee it, because Josh is so much more ubiquitous in this industry. And although Soldano has credibility, he only has credibility for most players that are over 40 or 50 years old. Josh, I think, has kind of transcended a lot of different age boundaries. And when you come out with a Rat Pack, that thing is going to sell. I mean, just because it's JHS, it's going to sell a lot.
Yep.
He's done a beautiful job in creating an identity for the people that use his stuff. I can guarantee you that but he didn't do an exclusive launch on Reverb. So I think that there is, again, I'm not doubting the accuracy of this list, but I am saying, look at this list for what it is, and that it is not a representation of the larger, I think the Sweetwater list is a good list to maybe compare against. They don't do a best of, although I think it is something that I would encourage them to do. A lot of dealers don't talk about this. They don't want to, I think that they feel like they can't share this information, or that there's something taboo about it. But I think it is cool to see where there is alignment and where there's not. I think that just keep that in mind as you're looking down this list.
Yep. I would say as well. I would say as well, for my customers, which admittedly is a sliver of the representation of the entire music industry for guitar players. So I think
a good cross section of professionals.
Yeah.
If you're talking about you and Brian, or even if we're looking at other rig builders, whether it's, LA Sound Design or Exactone, how many of these pedals are you seeing even on those boards?
That's what I was just going to say. The ones that I talk to guys every week about their pedal boards, and we go through, part of the call is we go through the list of pedals one by one, talk about signal chain, and the ones that I will see come up, let's say in the last 6 months out of this list, would be anything from Chase Bliss. Number 5.
But Habit is real specific. Of Chase Bliss.
I haven't seen a Habit yet. I haven't seen a Habit on one of our boards yet. Dream 65.
Two, I would say those for sure. I think that the Keeley is probably, as
Keeley's
far as new delays.
Up.
Those are showing up. Brian has certainly put a lot of them down. The Space Echo one. That was,
that one has got me intrigued. Another one I haven't actually had up in Canada. Even if it comes onto our boards, the guys in America build them for us. So I thought
you were going to say even if they come through our borders, there's an embargo on Space Echoes.
If they are so lucky to make it past that. Well, we don't quite have the wall yet. But,
you have to smuggle it in, huh?
Exactly.
Right.
So we would see a lot of stuff from Chase Bliss, but not necessarily the Habit. Lots of Walrus. So the M1, the D1, ACS1, we see a lot of that. The UA.
Now, surprising to me is that the M1 is here. I feel like I see a lot more D1 and R1s to M1s.
Yeah, I would say that's true. We'd probably see maybe 2 to 1. We'd probably see D1 and R1 twice as much as an M1.
And I believe this Ruby. I think that's
the thing.
Believable.
I'd say out of this list, the one I see the most of currently, as in the last 3 months, would be the UA Ruby and Dream.
Yeah,
I see those more than anything else.
That's number 5 and number 11 on this list.
Yeah. And it's odd. I mean, I don't know if this is just people complaining about the price. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about, man, these things are expensive. They are, but I see them all the time. Regardless of how expensive they are, people are still buying them.
Yep.
And so I see those a lot. I haven't seen a JHS preamp yet. I haven't seen a Slotfa yet by Walrus Audio, Death by Audio Spacebender, the Zeo by Source Audio, number 15.
I saw a good amount of those.
It looks like an awesome pedal. I was actually really happy to see that on this list.
Yeah.
And then out of the rest of the pedals on the list, haven't seen any of those on a setup yet.
Yeah,
so
this
number
also
20
is very
to 16.
new. Like the Lore is pretty new. It hasn't been out too long. I don't know what the Amp Academy is.
I just looked it up before this, and I wanted to chat to you about this. And a general complaint I have about amp and cab sims / question. This is the new X is it NGS?
NGS-6
Amp Academy. It's an amp and cab sim. It has 6 different amp models built into it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I was like, oh, finally, I'm going to look up the specs, see what they have, and I want to see what kind of Marshall they're using. No Marshall. Universal Audio, no Marshall. Obviously, ACS1 and Iridium, I believe, have some Marshall options. But what's with the hating on Marshall? They have what was it? Bogner in the new X, and they have 2 Fenders. They have, I think, a Vox style, but like Soldano, I think. No Marshalls to be seen. And what is with these companies not putting out a Marshall amp, one of the most popular amps in existence, and it's not making it on key releases? And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on this, or it's bugging me. It's annoying.
Well, I
me
wonder
that
if they're banking on like the Bogner, if it's like an Ecstasy or a Shiva or an SLO for.
But even if it's a replica.
If they're saying that sound is more in line with the lead tone of a Marshall.
If it's more Marshall than a Marshall?
Well, it's certainly, like the SLO stands for Super Lead Overdrive. So it's supposed to, be sort of like a hot rodded Marshall sound. And maybe that's what they're banking on, is that it has some relationship by way of that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm just a little stumped. That's all. And I thought I'd bring it to you, Mason.
Right.
In this
we
public
talked about
forum.
a little bit last week about the Woodrow.
The Tweed.
Yeah, the Tweed UA pedal, and that was like an interesting choice, considering that like the Mount Rushmore for amp tones would certainly be Vox, Marshall and Fender.
Yeah.
And they chose
Fender Vox.
Fender Vox. And so that was a little unusual, but maybe they were like, two for them, 1 for us. Maybe somebody at UA is a
sure
big
there's
Tweed fan. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have Tweed wallpaper. In
so
their
it's
homes,
just in front of them all day long.
No, they love the 50s.
Yep.
And they want to go all in, and I get it. And we're not going to say ooh, we're going to say wow.
Yep.
As it comes to that. We're not going to be disgusted by their Tweed proclivities. We're going to embrace it. And they're great amps. I have a really ratty 59 Tweed Deluxe, a real one, and they can be really glorious, but they're very specific.
Yeah.
But that was the sound of a lot of the Steely Dan stuff. That was what Larry Carlton, used on most of the Steely Dan stuff, and Donald Fagen's Nightfly. Some pretty iconic stuff. I mean, in most of the Eagles stuff. I mean, there's countless uses of the Tweed Deluxe, but Wampler Moxie. this thing I'm sure sold a lot too. I'm probably way more than a lot of these. Yeah, it's his like TS9 mini pedal. But again, he's another guy where he has such a baked in audience.
Yeah.
He's been doing this for so long. And something that is so ubiquitous, like a Tube Screamer, when Wampler comes out with something like that, it's like you can already guarantee that there's like a couple thousand that are going to be sold right off the bat. It's just how it is, you know. And it's not that uncommon. Like I know when we release a Dumble style, like a Steel String or Ultrafonic, I know immediately 2,000 the first 6 weeks. It's just I know that's going to happen. That doesn't change. And in Wampler's numbers probably higher than that because he's been around longer. He has bigger manufacturing capabilities. And I'm sure that he's, you know, like, and I can guarantee you there's a list, there's pedals on this list that have not eclipsed that number. Or if they have, it took much longer because they're so specific.
Yep.
All right, and here we have the first number one baby in tone.
Hey. So for those listening, Oakley, Mason's firstborn, is now joining us.
Yes.
He's got some opinions on the matter. I think he might disagree with some of the things we're saying, and we welcome that.
Yeah. Well, and this is all part of his tone baptism, as we're calling it.
Yep.
That he needs to be schooled. So if you hear any odd noises or you hear any farting, it could be me, but it's most likely Oakley.
Okay. We'll
Yeah,
play the chances there, and we'll say it's Oakley for now. But you know, we may never know.
You'll never know.
To round out the top 10 here, just out of new releases, this is what Reverb says are the top 10 bestsellers. From number 10, we have the Mako M1, which is modulation by Walrus Audio.
Yep,
9 is Boss RE2, which is kind of the smaller re-release.
It looks like a normal Boss pedal.
Yeah. So that's a delay. Number 8, we have the Duke of Tone, which is kind of like a King of Tone, but much smaller, released by MXR. 7
and I believe that sold a ton. I mean, that should be on that list, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. 7, we also have MXR, Poly Blue Octave.
I don't believe that one.
No?
No.
Okay.
It's just not as
applicable.
It's not like overdrives immediately. I mean, here's one thing to clarify. Overdrives in the industry outsell everything else, like 3 or 4 to 1.
At the very least, Duke of Tone and Poly Blue Octave should be reversed.
There's no way that the Poly Blue Octave sold more. There's no way the Poly Blue Octave sold more.
So maybe that was a pairing and they really pushed it.
I don't know.
Maybe there's some reason for it. But either way, Poly Blue Octave is number 7. 6 is the Boss RE202, the big boy version of the Boss Space Echo. 5 is the Dream 65, Universal Audio's Amp Sim. 4 is Keeley Halo, Andy Timmons Dual Echo. 3 is the Line 6 DL4 MK2. 2 is Earthquaker Devices Special Cranker, which again probably shouldn't be that far up the list. And then number 1 is the Chase Bliss Habit at first position, which we talked about a bit already. A little skeptical it's that high on the list, but this is the list from Reverb, the top 10. Let's move down to the best overall selling pedals of 2022. I definitely have some thoughts on the list here. Before we get into it, though, why don't we break to hear from a couple of our sponsors, and we will come back with the top best-selling pedals overall in 2022 according to Reverb. So let's break for one of our sponsors, and we will be right back.
Sorry for the interruption, but I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about one of our amazing sponsors, our friends over at Sweetwater, and their brand new platform called Gear Exchange, which is a buying and selling platform for people like you and me who love to buy and acquire new gear and also sometimes offload gear that we haven't been using. Now, Sweetwater has really designed this to really be optimal for your budget and also to really help support people that want to move their gear. Now, they have a really cool policy where normally if you sold any gear, you'd normally have to pay some sort of seller fee with ordinary selling platforms like Reverb, for example. But if you decide that you want to keep your money in the form of a Sweetwater gift card, you can actually collect the entire amount of whatever your earnings may be as a seller. Now, right now it advertises that that's going to end as of October 31st, but Sweetwater is actually going to keep this going in perpetuity for the lifetime of the program, so that no matter what gear you sell as a seller, you will never have to incur a fee so long as you decide to keep all of the funds on a Sweetwater gift card. And if you're somebody like me, you're constantly buying new stuff from Sweetwater, whether it be guitar gear, pro audio gear, or whatever it may be. If you're somebody who's constantly buying new gear, it's a great way to save on fees and always make sure that you're getting the great sales and support that's consistent with Sweetwater and their amazing sales engineers. So definitely check out the Gear Exchange on Sweetwater's website. Absolutely amazing. Really a great platform that I can already see has some great items. I'm looking for a Fender Custom Shop Strat right now, so I'm already on the search on Gear Exchange to try to find another great Strat to add to my arsenal. So I hope you'll enjoy this asset to the gear community as much as I am, and I can't wait to see how they grow and develop this. Really, really excited to be using Gear Exchange from our friends over at Sweetwater. Sorry for the interruption, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our incredible sponsors, Bestronix, also known as BTPA, an amazing company out of Chicago, Illinois. Now, most of us at the Chairmen of the Boards get a lot of our materials that we build our pedal boards with, whether that be cable, whether that be for audio, whether that be for power, whether that be connectors like 1/4-inch connectors or 2.1 millimeter barrel connectors for power. All the supplies that you could possibly need to build the pedal board of your dreams is available at Bestronix. They have amazing, amazing selections, all the cables that you could possibly want, whether it's Mogami, whether it's Evidence, whatever it may be. They have every single brand conceivable, in addition to their own brand, their in-house brand, which is absolutely incredible sounding, super low capacitance, and competes with all the best stuff, whether it be Mogami, Canary, Belden, etc. They have a great in-house brand. Highly recommended, and listeners get a special discount using the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, just like the old show on Saturday Night Live where they talked about Da Bears being from Chicago, as Bestronix are. You can use the coupon code DACHAIRS and you can get 10% off anything in the entire store. Absolutely amazing way to save some dough, get some great materials from some great people. Bestronix, absolutely amazing company, highly recommended by the Chairman of the Boards.
All right. Thanks, guys. So we are back now. Top 20 according to Reverb, best-selling pedals overall.
Overall. So not stuff that came out this year.
It could have come out 30 years ago, and it could still technically be on this list. Firstly, I have to say, coming in at number 20, a little disappointed. For those of you watching, you will already see this on the screen on YouTube. Number 20, this is probably a pedal in my mind. It's got a special place in my heart. I think it should be at number 1. This is the Ibanez TS9 Tube Screamer. I'm a big Tube Screamer fan. I know that for certain rigs, people just can't get along with it. It sounds great to me.
It's pretty well known that the Tube Screamer descended from the heavens with Jesus.
Right? It's a vintage pedal, and it's got a place in on a modern guitar player's board. It's stood
if
the
you don't
test
have a
of time.
Tube Screamer on your rig, that makes you suspect.
On many levels.
Many levels.
And so Tube Screamer, it's coming in at number 20. Mason, where do you think, if this was representative of the music industry as a whole, we have Boss, we have MXR, we have Full Tone, like all sorts of Line 6, huge names in the industry putting out pedals.
Yep.
Ibanez Tube Screamer, where do you think that list would be overall if this was
I'm sure that it's in the tens of thousands every year. I'm sure that in the overdrive category in terms of volume.
Would you say top 5?
I would say, yeah, it's easily. And I would say that, the SD1 also would be in that category because it's similar to it's basically Boss's answer to it. And it's a asymmetrical clipping version basically of a TS9 or a Tube Screamer. Doesn't necessarily have to be the 9. But I think that those are certainly some of the best sellers out there. I just don't I don't see how in the overall industry they're that low on the list relative to some of the stuff that's on here. Let me put it that way.
Yep. And I would say as well, for any of you, if you don't have a tube screamer, the great thing about a tube screamer, Mason, feel free to disagree with me. Great thing about tube screamer, you don't really have to worry too much about the version type. You can get a tube screamer for cheap. It's going to sound great and you're good to go. You don't have to spend $300, $400 on a really boutique overdrive to get a great sound. A tube screamer is a staple.
Yeah.
And it does what it does and nothing more. And I think, so you don't have to look for a super expensive version. Just get a TS9, plug it in, and start playing. You'll be happy.
Yeah. I'm in agreement. You don't. I've said this before. There's a lot of tube screamer perverts out there, and they will just go over the different versions and talk about the JRC,
the magic
455. There's so many hangups, and you know what? It's still going to sound like a tube screamer at the end of the day. And a lot of these guys, they're not like recording the tube screamers and like listening to them and like blind testing them. There's like an emotional response where you almost feel it's like they have Stockholm syndrome, and the abuse is the amount of money that they paid for it, and then they feel like they need to be more loyal to that because they spent like $400 for like.
You have to justify.
Fill in the blank boutique tube screamer. Just get a TS9. Don't be a pervert. You're going to be if you like the sound of a tube screamer, the TS9 is going to
spend $100 on it and just get an Ibanez TS9.
Spend $100. It's 3 knobs and the truth. Let's do it, guys.
I like that. Yeah. So that's number 20. I think that should be much higher. 19, we have the SD1, which you said is kind of Boss's version of that.
Arguably those would be neck
Way
and neck
up the
with
top.
each other.
Yeah. And then another company I thought would be on here more, especially towards the top, even on Reverb, because Reverb favors this brand, in my opinion, is Strymon. And Strymon only has, just quickly checking the list, 3 slots on the list. And they are all past number 5. Iridium is number 6. Then we have at 13, we have the Big Sky, obviously a great pedal. 15, we have the Timeline. Okay, 4 spots. And 18, we have the Flint V1. And so I thought Strymon would be at least in the top 4. They would have something, but it's not the case, according to Reverb. One encouraging thing that I really enjoyed seeing, again, I've already kind of said this in today's episode a little bit. The Timeline has been out for well over 10 years now. Maybe 12, maybe I don't even know when it was released. It's been out for a while. And it's still, after 12 years, in the number 15 position on Reverb. Maybe higher in the industry overall. I have no idea. But it's pretty impressive if you think about it. They've had a pedal out for that long, and it's still selling incredibly well. Something I aspire to. I would love to be able to say that about one of my pedals in the future. Currently, I don't have a Timeline-like pedal, but it's just really cool to see that.
But people do say that the interfacer is the Timeline of buffers.
Ah, there we go. See, I haven't heard anyone say that, but I will take that, and I'm going to run with it. That's my new advertising
good,
slogan.
Euphemisms like that. Like my cousin used to say that he went to the Harvard of the San Fernando Valley, which was Cal State Northridge.
Oh, there you go.
So
yes.
There can always be sort of equivalency in your sort of subcategory.
Yes, yeah. Or in my case, kind of subcategory. Yeah, niche of all niches. So that's great. I'm pumped for Strymon in that regard. That the Timeline is still obviously doing its thing. What are your thoughts? Let's move up to top 10 here. Number 10, we have the Boss BD2 Blues Driver. One thing I'll say off the bat,
your favorite pedal, first of all.
I cannot connect with a BD2. But one thing I was surprised about, in this whole list of 20, there is not a single, correct me if I'm wrong, scanning, there's not a single Wazacraft pedal, which I was very surprised about.
Shocking, because you know that those are selling.
They sell so well.
30, 40, 50,000 units a year of just one model. There's got to be hundreds of thousands of those.
So why is there no Wazacraft version on this list?
Because they're probably, I wonder if Boss is also, is like some companies deliberately restrict third-party resellers. You know, so you could say, I don't want this product to be sold on Amazon. I don't want this product to be sold on Reverb. I don't want it to be sold on eBay.
Yeah.
You can only sell it brick and mortar or on your website. And so there's companies that do that are huge companies. And if they did that, automatically they would be omitted from this list.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. That's a good point. Yeah. And so that's another thing I'd say with this list is you take it with a grain of salt. It is by no means representative of the whole industry. It's representative, like Mason was saying, of a niche part of the market. So we have the Blues Driver number 10, a really fun pedal on number 9, which is the Digitech Drop, kind of like an octave pitch style pedal.
And those are really good utility stuff too. Like if you have like a song that's like a half step down or a whole step down or whatever, it can be really handy to have.
I am staunchly against doing that, as handy as it is. I do see it's like using a capo in essence, except you can pitch down.
A digital capo. It's
a digital capo that you can pitch up, pitch down. I am staunchly against it. Just for the fact, I think it trains you.
By the way, did you see the capo that was released that was called the Baby Finger?
No.
It's been very, very controversial.
What a name.
This is not a joke.
It just feels dirty.
It feels terrible.
It feels wrong. Like, why would you call something that?
Marvin has made a capo that is called the Baby Finger. And it has come under a lot of scrutiny. I also didn't notice
I think it should.
I don't know if there's a capo list that Reverb's going to come out with, but wondering if it made the list.
Oh, yeah. No, haven't heard of the Baby Finger. It both feels wrong to say, and it feels like it'll break.
As Oakley sits here next to me.
Exactly. Treat your baby's fingers with respect.
There was no babies that were harmed. Also, there's no babies in baby back ribs, Oakley, just so you know. They don't take the backs of babies.
Oh, no.
Just so you know.
So the Baby Finger. Yeah, so I'm staunchly against the Digitech Drop because I feel like it trains people in bad habits. I think you should learn how to play in different keys rather than get a pedal to do it for you.
And
that's
you definitely don't want to hear your guitar acoustically, because if you do, it's going to really mess with you.
Exactly. And that's like, I don't know if you've ever been in this scenario, but like playing with a keyboard player and they're on, the venue specific keyboard, and it's like, all right, we're going to play this song in B flat. Like, I don't know how to play it. I don't know how to transpose down to B flat on this keyboard. And they're in, the middle of playing a song or a gig or whatever, and they can't do it because the transpose button doesn't work. In my mind, that's the same thing as using the Digitech Drop as your transposition method. Just my opinion. And then number 8, we have the staple. I would hope this would be everyone's first pedal.
Oh my God! This TU3, Boss TU3. That's going to outsell everything. That's like one of the most sold pedals of all time.
Yep.
Also, the DS1, which is number 7, is also one of the most sold pedals of all time.
But still pretty far up on the list. So you would say, as an example, Strymon Iridium, there is no chance it's going to be outselling a TU3.
It's just too expensive. I mean, so the thing about and I'm not an expert in this in everything to do with sales, but there's a correlation between the price of something and the volume of something. And I think that the one example that points to that is, again, going back to that that Sweetwater list that Josh Scott had done a video on recently with Sweetwater, where he goes down their best-selling pedals. A lot of the top ones were Behringer because they're very inexpensive, and there is a correlation between volume and the cost of the products. Boss pedals are just, especially when you're talking about DS1 and TU3, what's a TU3 maybe now is over $100, but for a long time that was like $99, and you could often get a DS1 for like $49 or something like that on discount at a Guitar Center. Like, these sold tremendous. These were a lot of people. A DS1 especially was a lot of people's first pedals.
Yep.
Still is. They sell a ton of them.
SD1 was one of my first
ton
ones.
of them.
Yep.
What's that?
SD1 was one of my first ones. Similar kind of concept. Just cheap.
Yeah.
It's overdrive. It's your introduction into the market. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it is an interesting list. And I mean, I'm the first to say I could be wildly wrong with my opinions, but it just doesn't quite seem as accurate as what I would think the industry would
accurate
represent.
for reverb, but maybe not accurate for the world.
Yeah. So yeah, we have the Iridium ACS1. Oddly enough, Walrus Audio ACS1 is not on this list, and I would say per pedal board, again, just representing the customers I deal with, I see more ACS1s these days than I do Iridium quite easily. Hands down, would see more ACS1s than Iridiums. But as according to Reverb, Iridium is on the list, and ACS1 by Walrus Audio is not.
Not even in the top 20.
Very surprised to see a Proco Rat this far up the list. I do not believe.
I mean, I'm glad that it is. It's
a great pedal. Not one that I connect with, but I still believe it is a great pedal. Definitely has its place. But I just don't believe that people are buying more Proco Rats than they are anything from Boss. Anything from MXR, all that type of stuff. But here we are. Proco Rat is on the list. Are you a Rat user, by the way? I am not.
No, I have a full-blown infestation here.
Okay. Of the pedals or the vermin?
Yeah. Well, they can be interchangeable.
Fair enough.
No, I have quite a few different generations of rats. I even bought the Lil Rat, which it kind of sounds like a rap name when you go LIL.
Yeah. Yep.
I got the Lil Rat.
Yep.
And
I like
I think that they're great. I mean, let me put it this way. I think that for most people, like trying this pedal out in a guitar store, it's not going to be most people's taste, especially if you play like me, more like blues kind of stuff, more fusiony stuff. It can be a little harsh, but I have to say, recorded, it really works well for a lot of stuff, and so I end up using it a lot when I'm doing videos or I'm doing guitar recording. I think it sounds really good for that. In the room with it, it could be a little bit harsh, and I think a lot of people get turned off to it because of that. But certainly, the pedigree of songs that it was used on and people that have used it, it's a pretty illustrious list.
Would you say that Oakley is pro Rat, or is this the sound of someone that's saying, "Dad, it's time to shut up. Please stop talking about rats"?
Oakley, say something if you endorse the Rat.
Oh yeah, okay.
It seems lukewarm. There wasn't like an immediate response, so I'm going to say
he's
Oakley's
kind of playing
no
the fence
on the Rat.
a little bit. Hey, yeah, fair enough.
Oakley's a no on the Rat.
Okay,
sorry guys.
One option for people. I know a lot of people are aware of this pedal, but one option, if the Rat is a little too on the nose for you, is the 1981 DRV.
Yeah,
it can tame it down a little bit. Well designed, sounds great. Definitely more on the boutique side of things, so it has a bit of a higher price tag. But it's kind of like a Rat for people that don't like rats, but maybe want to. It'd be a Rat for me. And so that can be an option as well if you want to get if you want to step 1 foot. If you want a gateway Rat, I would say
it's a
the
domesticated
DRV.
Rat is I think what we're really saying.
Yeah, it's well groomed, gets haircuts once a week, it's washed. Yeah, good option.
Yeah.
Number 4, I have mixed emotions about this multi-effects unit. Do believe that it sells incredibly well, because it obviously does.
I am 100% sure that this outsold most of the stuff in the top 10.
Yeah, which is the Line 6 HX Stomp. I love the functionality, the options on paper. The specs of this pedal is awesome. You can run, 6 blocks, 7 blocks, 6 blocks at a time. So 6 different algorithms, sounds, all that type of thing. Very powerful pedal. Again, talking about things that we connect with and don't connect with, I do not connect with Line 6 algorithms as a whole. Kind of had their take on delay, their take on chorus, reverb, all that. There's some good sounds in there that I like. But the thing that is not on this list, but is released in 2020, I don't know if we'll spend much time on this or not, but would love to get your thoughts, is the Eventide, their new pedal, H90.
Oh, the H90. Yeah. It looks like the thing that, my only concern or my only question is why didn't they come out with this years ago? I guess they were trying to make sure they ran out of track on the H9.
Yeah.
And I think it was a complaint that a lot of people had where like there's a lot of boards, because when I was still doing boards, these were around that would have multiples of them to perform this very function that kind of the H90 does. And I think also they improved, of course, the display so that you can do more programming not on the phone, which is nice. I think my understanding though, and I haven't gone through all the specs, is that it still doesn't have an analog drive-through, which isn't the end of the world. But if you're using wet effects like I do, which is primarily wet-dry, you then absolutely need to use a mixer in order to ensure that you're not having any weird phasing challenges associated with the latency of the non-analog dry. So that's one challenge of it. But if you weren't using it like that, it wouldn't be consequential to you. Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem. Or if you're using it in the loop or whatever. Or I think even on that one now you can use like part of it in the loop and then part of it in front of the amp. So you can kind of have positions it both ways, and you can have it in stereo in the loop, in mono in front of the amp, which is cool too.
Yep. And so, like as an example, I love the Eventide algorithms. I think they sound incredible. But HX Stomp, such a great pedal. The amp and cab sim on HX Stomp, disappointed it was not on the new H90. No amp and cab sim, although they don't really do that.
That's not really their thing.
Fair enough. But the amp and cab sim on HX Stomp, I have multiple customers, time and time again, that will use HX Stomp, which is multi-effects. Any effect you can think of, HX Stomp probably has it. And they'll just use it for amp and cab sim. And I can't fault them for it because they've done such a good job with it. It sounds really good. So HX Stomp is on number 4. Number 3 is Earthquaker Devices Plumes, which, I see that come up a decent amount. I don't believe it would be a number 3.
Right? It's their answer to a tube screamer.
Question. Is that what it is?
I think so, which surprised me because I'm 100% sure that the TS9 sold more.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with you.
Got my hair pulled.
Yeah, so we have the Plumes.
Pay good money for that.
And then number 2, we have the Keeley Compressor Plus. I mean, when you think Keeley, the first effect that comes to mind for me is 3-knob compressor.
Oh, I think it's 2-knob.
Well, okay. So you're going even a step further. For me, when I was first aware of Keeley, it was the 3-knob compressor. And so compressor and Keeley to me they're kind of a match made in heaven. And so I'm happy to see Keeley up on the list.
He started the Ross revolution.
There you go. So I mean, I think it makes sense that they're on the list. Again, in position number 2, I don't know. Keeley makes a lot of pedals.
Keeley makes a lot of pedals. I mean, I'm sure that some version of his compressors are that one I don't find to be unbelievable. Like that I believe. I believe that his some variation of his compressor is out
on
there.
The list.
Yeah.
The most controversial pedal on the list, though, has to be number 1.
Yeah.
And I think before we get to number 1, we should take a quick break to hear from a couple of our sponsors. And we'll come back and tell you why I think this is the most controversial pedal that we will talk about today. And we will be right back.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about one of our amazing sponsors, Creation Music Company. Not only do they make amazing, beautiful pedal boards, but they also have started making their own 1/4-inch plugs and used exclusively by Brian Omilion of Omilion Audio. They have their mini cakes, which are low-profile pancake plugs, as well as short, straight plugs that really compete with any of the greatest and lowest profile short plugs out there. Great for pedal board switchers, and again, that's why guys like Brian Omilion use these plugs exclusively, and listeners get a special discount code. Using the code Chairmen15 is going to give you 15% off anything in the Creation website. You can get that discount, get whatever you need for your next pedal board, a pedal board surface, your plugs, whatever you're going to need to build the pedal board of your dreams. Creation is going to be able to help you do that. Head over to their website that's going to be listed in the show notes, as well as the description if you're watching on YouTube. Creation Music Company, absolutely amazing stuff, highly recommended by the chairman of the boards. Pardon the interruption, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our amazing sponsors, Pedal Genie. Pedal Genie is like the Netflix of guitar pedals. Basically, you can sign up for their service and get whatever pedals that you want sent directly to your door so that you can experiment, try out whatever pedals that you might want, the newest, coolest, latest, and greatest pedals, and you have no obligation to buy them like you would from an ordinary dealership where you'd have to go in, you'd have to buy the pedal, try it out at your home, and then have to worry about getting it back before the return policy expired. There's none of that with Pedal Genie. You simply select the pedals that you want, they send the pedals to your home, you get to check them out with your own gear, and then you can send them back to them when you're ready to try out some new stuff. Really cool system, very simple. And for the first month, listeners get an exclusive Chairman of the Boards discount, which is 50% off your first month using the discount code BOARDS, BOARDS. Gives you 50% off your first month with Pedal Genie. Absolutely amazing service, highly recommended by all of us here at the Chairman of the Boards.
All right, so we're back to overall on Reverb's list. We've talked about the overall best-selling pedals according to Reverb, regardless of release date. And number one is one that I have a theory on, but I struggle to believe is in first position, and that is the Hologram Electronics Microcosm. And the reason that I do not have any issue with this pedal, I love the aesthetic of Hologram.
It's a fun pedal.
The sounds of Hologram, like overall, I love what they do. The reason I don't believe it's on the number one spot, let's say more widely than Reverb, is because it is hard to get your hands on one. Even right now, as of today, you click on the link for Hologram. If you're watching on YouTube, the list is on the screen. You click on the link for Hologram and there's none listed. You can't get one on Reverb. And so that is, in my opinion, it kind of backs up my theory here. Are there some available now?
There's two.
Okay.
$4.99.
When I clicked earlier today, there were 0 listed.
There's one that's new.
Okay. We got one new and one used. So very hard to get. And it's been, ever since their release date, it's been stand by for the next batch. None available right now, but wait in line and you'll be able to get one in 4 weeks. So you'll be able to get one in 6 weeks, whatever it is. And so my theory on why it's number one, I think a lot of people are buying them when they're available, trying them out for a little bit, and then potentially reselling them. And then the next person buys it because it's not available, reselling, selling, buying, selling, buying. And so I think this represents maybe, as we know, this represents the sales of Microcosm on Reverb, but does not take into account if it's a new unit or a used unit. And I think they're just being cycled through the Reverb market because people know people want them. So you can move them along very easily, potentially at a profit. So those are my thoughts on the Microcosm in number one. I do not think it's a fair representation on the list. What do you think, Mason? Have you tried this one firstly?
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
I think again it's a cool thing. I mean, again, it's such a fringe, knowing what we know about overdrives, that they outsell everything, 3 or 4 to 1. This is certainly not something that is that specific in terms of what it does as sort of an ambient sort of effect. I mean, I'm frankly surprised it even made this on Reverb, but this number on Reverb, but it did. And again, this is not saying it's a bad pedal. I think it's really cool, and I think it's frankly really unique. I think the design element is really cool. I think it looks great. I think it has a ton of things going for it. I just don't see this as being a staple on anybody's rig. I don't see it being a tube screamer on people's rig. I don't see it being, a morning glory, on every, like something that any rig could use. It's so specific.
And the majority do use as far as the overdrives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, in this universe, I don't see it as a ubiquitous pedal.
So that's the list. We've talked through obviously the new releases and best sellers out of the new releases. Now we just finished up on the overall best sellers, regardless of release date, according to Reverb. Let's say we have someone listening to this podcast, which hopefully there's at least one. Maybe it's Brian, who we actually we actually haven't talked about the reason why Brian is not here. Brian is on a well-deserved holiday in Florida, and then the weather got in the way, and he is now stuck in I believe it's
hurricane.
A hurricane in Florida.
Yeah.
So Brian is not able to join
Disneyland.
us. Exactly. That must be the saddest place to be on Earth, when you are really close to Disneyland, but you can't go because of weather restrictions. So that's why Brian isn't with us today. Sorry it took us so long to actually bring that up. But
we just
here we are.
Brian.
We totally ignored Brian.
Yeah, the whole episode.
I like to think that it was a little bit it was a bit too painful to bring up why he wasn't here. It just doesn't feel quite right.
It does feel incomplete. Tonetown does not feel like.
I almost feel like we took a step away from Tonetown today without Brian here.
Yep.
So that's why it was just too painful to bring up earlier in the episode, but I just had to do it. So Brian will be back with us next week. But let's say we have someone listening. Let's say it's Brian, and Brian wants to know, I have these lists. It's a sliver of the industry as a whole, as far as a representation. It doesn't represent the whole industry. It represents a sliver, a niche, according to Reverb. How do you use this to your advantage? How do you use a list or these lists to your advantage according to Reverb, so it can maybe help you make some buying decisions, or what to avoid, what to try out? What would you tell people in terms of using this to their advantage?
Well, I would say I don't really know how. I'm struggling to see a silver lining here of like how somebody could apply it. I think that you could use it as at least an example of to say, okay, like these might be in terms of the broad categories like delay, overdrive, wah-wah. I'm trying to think of what else is like kind of core stuff on here. Compressors.
A looper. TC Electronic did a loopers at number 16.
I would use it mostly for like the staple products and just say, okay, these are good starting places if I'm just getting into pedals and I'm considering getting a tuner, I'm considering getting a distortion, I'm considering getting a reverb or an analog delay. And there's obviously pretty varied prices here. Like it's crazy to me that the number one pedal is $450. Like that just doesn't align with the market. Yeah. And so I think that there's going to be some things that are going to really throw you off. But I think if you're looking for the stuff that's, around the $200 range or less, that's going to be pretty representative of sort of staples in the industry. The other thing you could do too is Reverb keeps these lists out, for all the other years. So you could consult other years of the best sellers and maybe kind of look at like a cross section of like what are kind of recurring pedals that are showing up here year in and year out. Because that could help you see, okay, like what is going to be something that seems to be a staple and that people routinely turn to in the marketplace that can validate for me, like this is worth trying. Like the Carbon Copy has been on this list for a long time.
We haven't talked about it, but what a pedal.
Yeah, that's number 11. That pedal has sold, I bet it's probably sold hundreds of thousands with no exaggeration.
Delay for those that
aren't
familiar.
So something like that is going to be on it year in and year out. Something like the TS9 is going to be on there year in and year out. Something like the TU2 or the TU3 is going to be in there year in and year out. Blues Driver is probably going to be in there year in and year out. The Keeley compressor is probably going to be there. So there's going to be recurring things. I would look to that and look at maybe the last 5 years and then use that as like a jumping off point. Okay, here's an overdrive I'm going to get because I see it showing up year in and year out. Here's a compressor I'm going to get. Here's a tuner I'm going to get. Here's a delay I'm going to get. There's always going to be fads where you end up getting sort of a really, really fringe pedal showing up as number one. It's not really representative or is an outlier in the industry that is exaggerated by the fact that it's presented by Reverb. So I think you just need to temper this list with reality.
And one of the other things with lists in general, we kind of covered this in our gear reviews episode, talking about how to trust or how to approach gear reviews, is a lot of these lists, not talking about Reverb specifically, but any top 10 best of lists these days are curated more for the affiliate link or more for the benefit of the writer than they are the benefit of helping the person reading, unfortunately. That may be my cynical view, but typically people will, pay to be on the list rather than the person actually doing some research and saying what actually are the best selling pedals or what is the best guitar of whatever year it is. And so whenever these lists come up, I usually look at the list and, like you're saying, I'll use them as a starting off point and then do further research, but I will not take any list, including this one. And you should not take any list that I write or anyone else writes just solely based on that one piece of documentation. You should always be doing your own research. Just as best practice, in my opinion, because you just really don't know at the end of the day.
You don't know.
And it's a hard place to be in as the user, as the customer. It's a really tricky place to be in. And
ironically, I believe next episode we are going to do our own list of our top gear.
So should we just tell people don't listen to that episode?
Well,
You can't trust us.
I think it's as we said in previous episodes. You have to, as a consumer, find the spokesperson or the teacher or the demonstrator that you feel like most closely aligns to you as a player. And we called that finding your tone Yoda. And so you need to find your tone Yoda to say, this person clearly understands me. We have alignment in how we play guitar and how we hear things. And that's been demonstrated through multiple different reviews that this person has done, where when I receive the pedal, that I'm in full alignment of what they said and how they demonstrated it. And that's represented in my rig. And there are other people where you're going to do that same thing. You're going to be like, this guy was not a good metric for me as a baseline, because I thought we played similarly and we heard things similarly, but clearly this guy is not hearing things the same. And I think you have to give like some margin of error. There's probably going to be taste, and things like that work into it. But if somebody can be right for you, let's say 70 or 80% of the time, it's a pretty good metric that, is certainly worth, buying a product based on that review if you have that close of alignment. So I think the bottom line is find your tone Yoda and temper, top 10, top 100 lists like this with reality, and look at where you're seeing recurring products showing up over and over and over again. And some of these products may be on our best gear of the year as we see it from a rig builder standpoint. Now, remember, our point of view is very specific. We, and when I say we, I mostly mean Grant and Brian, are building pedal boards for professionals. So not only are we vetting pedals on the level of, are these good pedals, but do they actually work as parts of a whole? Because a lot of these pedals are designed by people. In fact, most pedals are designed by people that are not putting them with other pedals. They're designing them as their own islands, and they're not thinking about the consequences of different impedances on the input and output that are leading up to that pedal or coming after that pedal. And we get to see in real time every day what happens when that's not considered. And the pedals that are actually working well as parts of a whole, that is a whole nother level of pedal that's different than this list. And so our recommendations are going to be looking at those sorts of things and considering those sorts of things. So I think in a lot of cases, rig builder advice is sometimes even more important than top 10 lists, because these pedals are vetted another level beyond what the gear review can do. Just saying.
And I'll also say, as far as chairman of the boards goes, and a lot of other gear reviewers out there, they will be very clear and upfront if this is we're being paid or the person gave us this gear and now we're talking about it, versus like today, no one on the list, as you can probably tell by some of our comments that maybe weren't as favorable, have paid us to mention their products. This is just our opinions, unfiltered to a degree. I try and talk quite positively about any person's gear as much as I can. But if there's something that, needs to be addressed and, this is a flaw or this is an issue, we'll bring it up and we'll be honest about it. And a whole lot of other gear reviewers are the same. They aren't going to be just blatantly lying to your face for their own personal gain. And so we will always tell you, and a lot of great gear reviewers out there will always tell you, this is a pay to play type thing, as you'll sometimes say, Mason, or this is just my opinion. This is what I think. Yeah. Take it with a grain of salt and, go from there. So, I think we've covered a lot of good ground today, and hopefully it's been helpful. Again, this is our opinions from our small corner of the industry, and hope you guys have enjoyed it. Before we finish up and give some closing little remarks, and obviously hear from Oakley one last time before we finish up, because I guess Oakley is kind of our stand-in Brian today. So we need to hear from him as well. We're going to hear from just a couple of our sponsors one last time before we finish up, and we will go into the closing statements of the episode.
So sorry for the interruption, guys, but I wanted to take a moment to speak to you about one of our amazing sponsors, Mono. Now, if you know anything about the guitar case or just case game in general, Mono has been among the high watermark of all companies in the industry at protecting your gear and giving you some really useful advantages over all the other stuff that's out there with specialty compartments and just really well-made stuff. I use one of their double gig bags, and I often will take 2 guitars in that, and it's just an absolute lifesaver, not having to carry 2 hard cases, but really getting the protection that those hard cases offer. And it allows me to just throw it in the back of my trunk, allows me to be able to get it to the gig, not have to have extra weight due to hard cases. Just a really, really great piece of equipment. And it's that way for anything from Mono, whether you're talking about their great pedal boards, which Grant from Goodwood Audio uses very frequently and are very good quality, in addition to the cases like I would use for my guitar. Absolutely amazing stuff. Highly recommend Mono. And you can get 10% off anything in their store by using the coupon code Chairmen. So head over to Mono's website. It'll be linked in the description and in the show notes, and use the coupon code Chairmen. Get 10% off anything on their website, including the great cases, the great pedal boards, and all the other supplies and goods that they sell over there. Before we wrap up today, I want to again thank our sponsor, BetterHelp, for helping make this podcast possible. Again, BetterHelp is an amazing service that allows you to have therapy in the comfort of your very own home. Again, as I said before, sometimes life will throw at you curveballs, sometimes building pedal boards will throw at you curveballs. And BetterHelp is there to help support you make your way through the complications that just arise as part of being human. And if that's something that you'd be interested in, BetterHelp has the largest network of therapists, over 3 million matches between individuals like you and me, and licensed and vetted therapists through BetterHelp. It is incredibly affordable compared to the ordinary therapeutic models that many people might institute, the old school way of going into a therapist's office. There's no waiting rooms, there's no traffic, there's no commute. You can do it all from your very own home. All you need to do is fill out a questionnaire to help match you with the best possible therapist, again, for what you're looking for. And on top of that, you can save 10% on your first month by going to betterhelp.com/chairman. And again, you'll get to see why millions of people choose to get their therapy in this format, again, through our friends over at BetterHelp.
Okay, so we've gone through our lists. We have summarized, what lists you should trust, maybe what you should consider when looking at a top 10, top 20, best-selling, best of type list when you're looking into gear reviews. Any final closing thoughts or remarks, Mason and or Oakley, before we finish up?
I think the bottom line is, just to recap, find your tone, Yoda, whoever that may be.
Yep.
Use other lists of best-selling or top-ranked gear, or even just use multiple years of Reverb listings to validate good choices if you're getting into pedals. And I think for a lot of you, you probably already have some facility in understanding pedals that work for you, pedals that don't. And so, this you may already have the same attitude when looking at a list like this, is that you're gonna temper it with your own experiences. And I think that we just have to recognize that this is a subsection of, what's out there, and it's specific to Reverb, and that is not representative of the industry. And I think, again, we can clearly see that just by way of the Sweetwater video that Josh Scott did, where he went through their kind of top sellers of, and there were a few things that were common on this list, but mostly not. And Reverb is a $1 billion retailer that is selling a lot of pedals and focusing explicitly on new pedals. And again, I don't think any of these lists can be taken in isolation and said this is the truth, but I think that we look at a combination of the two, and we start to get a little clearer picture of what's out there. So I don't think we can rely too heavily on any one list. I think we use them as indicators and markers, and we hope that people will be able to take that information and then make a judgment call of their own. And if you're still confused, you can listen next week, and we'll give our best gear of the year according to 3 people that are building rigs, and hopefully that can even give you another data point to kind of consider in your pedal choices.
Love it. I would also say as well, for let's just take overdrives as an example. You can always ask a trusted friend, comment to someone on Instagram. You'll most likely get a response back if you see someone using it. But with overdrive specifically and a whole bunch of other pedals, there are boutique versions. So maybe a smaller company might make their take on a Tube Screamer. The price will be higher than the original Tube Screamer. So your friend might recommend a Tube Screamer clone, or Klon clone, super popular as well. All great pedals. But if you do just a little bit of research, you can find potentially, a more mass-produced version like an Ibanez TS9, and you can get it for half the price. And so if you just do a little bit of research and looking around, you can find some really good deals. It might not be the popular sexy pedal of the week, but as far as tonal, aspects are concerned, you can save a whole bunch of money by doing 5 minutes of research. What is this pedal based on? What's the original circuit? And it'll be probably one of 4 circuits most of the time that you're going to find. And you'll be able to find that pedal for literally half the price. If you don't need to have that boutique version, you can save a whole lot of money and get all of the tones that your buddies are getting, and you'll be in a great spot, both financially and tonally.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to be a Tube Screamer pervert, as we talked about earlier.
Exactly. You've got a lot of good sayings this episode, Mason. I just want to say thank you for that. Tone Yoda, don't be a Tube Screamer pervert. There's a couple other ones. Just really appreciating that. Want to give credit where credit is due. So yeah. I don't know if you have anything else to finish us up with, but those are my thoughts for the episode on top 20 lists from Reverb. And I'm happy to finish up with one final word from maybe Oakley or yourself.
Oakley?
I mean, when it's all been said, it's all been said. Thank you, Oakley. Appreciate your restraint. That's it for today's episode. We'll see you guys next week.
All right.